Check 1, 2.
Go! Curious about real estate? Yes! Then you've come to the right place. Get the knowledge you need. Get over the fear and get started. This is the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show with your host, Michael Quarles.
Hello everybody, Michael Quarles with the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Welcome to Wednesday. Today we have podcast 203, and it is 5 questions sent in from real estate investors. And remember, if you have a question, send it to support@michaelquarles.com. That's support@michaelquarles.com. Here we go. Question number 1, how do I pick an area to market to? That's a great question. It really depends on if you want to go virtual or if you're going to be brick and mortar. So if you're going to be marketing or buying in the city that you live in, then we don't have to first research which city or determine which city I want to go to. So if you're going to go market to your city, then I would run an algorithm on the city and determine which zip codes would work best for you. If you're going to do like the generalized marketing to both absentee owners and owner occupants, that's not necessarily necessary if you're going to say you have a large city. Let's as an example, let's say Los Angeles, California, and you only want to market to out-of-state absentees, but you want the whole citywide market. Then you wouldn't have to run an algorithm. So because we're looking for very specific people inside of our geographical area. If you want to know, okay, I'm going to market to absentees. I don't care if they're in-state, out-of-state, in-city, that kind of thing. And I'm going to be marketing to owner occupants. Then I would run the algorithm to remove the zip codes that may not produce as well as some of the other ones. And some of the data factors that we're going to look for are number of units inside of a zip code, how many cash sales, how many pre-foreclosures, how many REOs, what's our average days on market, what's our median value of the property, how many houses in that zip code have an equity base and under median, and then how many of those are the top third, middle third, and bottom third. And you run all those kind of numbers together. I'm sure I'm leaving out some. And come up with a formula or geographical area that you want to market to. So it's not hard. It takes about 6 to 8 hours to go through and actually do for your city. But once you have it, now you know. And we shouldn't base our marketing solely upon what we think. We really do need to look at some of the data sets that are coming back to us. Even if what we think turns out to be 100% accurate, we still like having that data. As an example, if I'm with a seller and I know that in their market, 2% of the houses are in pre-foreclosure, 1% of the houses in the market are owned by banks or REOs. And I know how many houses in their market are on the market. Well, when I can look at those numbers and evaluate them for the seller, I can paint a not so great picture based upon the information I have. So if I know that I have 3% of the market that's in a foreclosed status, but I only have 7% of the market that's available for sale, well, I mean, I could have that conversation with the seller and tell them that, and discuss with them why their opportunity with me today is better than something else, because that inventory is going to hit the marketplace. And let's face it, the lending institutions can discount the value of those properties, which causes other properties which are using them as comparables to also devalue. So a seller's in a high foreclosed area, the seller's really being harmed by having such a large amount of pre-foreclosures and REOs. Now, if we want to look at that same kind of data and we're going to buy a property, and we know that the average days on market in that area are 57. That's the average, sure. And so some escrows will go, or closings will go longer than that. Some will go shorter than that. But we need to figure a holding time of 57 days. So when we write our offer to purchase, if our intention is to start offering that property to a buyer immediately at contract, not at ownership, then we need to at least look at a 57-day contract. Now, if we're intending not to start marketing it until we have ownership, then we know we have a 57-day average hold period. And so we have to take that number into consideration when we submit our offer. So having some of these numbers, even if what you know is 100% accurate, knowing these numbers will help you when you start buying and reselling properties. So look at some of those and pick your area using those data sets. Question number 2. I listened to your podcast where you close deals with sellers. My question is, after they sign the agreement, are you wholesaling it? If so, what do you tell the seller when they ask you when they're going to get paid? Well, unfortunately, some of the deals we do wholesale. I say unfortunately because I don't like that as a business model. I think it's one of the most expensive models for real estate investing. Although, if it's the only opportunity you have, maybe you have an overabundance of opportunities so you can't close them all, or this is your only opportunity, I'd rather make some money than no money. But I'm not going to try to do this as my first line of how I'm going to create wealth. It's going to be lower on the totem pole. I'd much rather sell it to an investor at 100% of as-is value and make all of the spread instead of percentage of the profit, which is what typically wholesaling does or assigning. As far as what we tell the seller, it's inside of our agreement. There's a paragraph that says the buyer may assign this contract. So we're above board and forward with them. It also says that we're going to make a huge amount of money buying and reselling their property, and that we may resell it or begin to resell it the moment we have it contracted. That we're going to advertise it in the MLS, that we're going to put a for sale sign out if we want to. We can advertise it in any periodical or magazines. We're letting the seller know our intention. Because when we do, and when we're honest, well, they can't hold our honesty against us later when they say, well, I didn't know. Well, it's clear that you did know because it's inside the agreement, and it's in, the word huge is the biggest word on the page. And in fact, if you want my contract, all you have to do is go to michaelquarles.com. There's a form to fill out. It'll download to you, and so you can actually see it. And I think we have to be responsible to our sellers by telling them the truth. So I don't think there's any issue about that. And then the last part of your questions, what do you tell them when they ask when they're going to get paid? They've already agreed when they're going to get paid because that's the term of the agreement. So we write contracts for 60 days. Naturally, on occasions, we want to close sooner than 60 days. On occasion, we want to extend that 60-day period. But that communication's done in the very beginning or made in the very beginning with the seller. And I think it's important that they know the time frame. Now, I do also understand and realize that our sellers are in urgent mode and they've procrastinated. With that said, we have to protect our rights and our abilities and our commitment by not overcommitting and by sticking to our 60 days as a minimum. And if you are selling houses, you understand that 60 days is becoming a standard in traditional real estate sales. Where it used to be 30 days was the standard, 60 days is becoming the standard. So it's not unheard of to do a 60-day closing. And in 60 days, you should be able to find the buyer.
Thanks for listening. We'll be right back. Are you running out of leads? It's time you tried Yellow Letters at yellowletters.com. Get motivated seller leads through yellow letters, postcards, zip letters, typed professional letters, greeting cards, door hangers, and business cards. Yellow Letters is a full-service marketing company created with your success in mind. Get the personal attention you need to get your direct mail campaign started and get in touch at yellowletters.com.
And we are back in 3, 2, 1.
Question number 3. Have you purchased multiple properties from one owner? What do you think is the best practice for such an occurrence? I have. As far as best practice, the one practice that most investors do, and I would stay away from, is they start talking to the seller about all of the properties and they get super excited because they think they've just hit a home run and In reality, we have to break each transaction apart and deal with one of them at a time. So I really do not want to group the purchases together and make all of the purchase contingent upon me buying all of the properties. I want to deal with each individual property under an individual contract. And if the seller says, I want to sell them all, well, that's great, Mr. Seller. Which one do you want to sell first? And let's deal with that one. When we're done dealing with that one, let's talk about the second one. They may come back and say, well, I want to sell them all on the same day, which is fine. I'm still going to place multiple contracts in action because, let's face it, we just talked about assigning, and I may have to assign some of the contracts. I may buy some of the contracts. I may, flip some of the contracts on a simultaneous or concurrent close. I want an individual contract so I can do those things. If I have a group contract, I can't. And besides that, it gets real confusing when you talk to a seller about multiple properties at the same time. It's much like if you had like 5 girlfriends or 5 boyfriends. Can you imagine if you dated 5 people at the same time? Now, I'm sure some of you gals have. I haven't, but I can just imagine what it would be like trying to remember the conversation. And, what specific detail did you discuss the last time you saw them? And maybe it wasn't the details you remember correctly or with the person you remember correctly. So keep in mind, so much easier, individual contracts, one at a time. Question number 4. I hope that made sense, by the way. And those of you that have dated 4 people or 5 people or 10 people at a time, I'm not passing judgment. Congratulations. Question number 4. How many mailers would you send out when you don't have a reliable response rate and closing ratio yet? Enough, but not too much. So what I mean by that is, I like that $1,000 to $2,000 spend, which should get you somewhere around 1,400 to 2,800 pieces of mail on average when you do cluster marketing. I like that in the beginning. Now, after you learn what you don't know, and mainly, it's not necessarily your closing rate that you're learning in the beginning, although that's an important part. What you're learning is how to communicate and those buy signals and signs that the seller will give you that you may not be aware of in advance or prior to. And little things like controlling the conversation, the power exchange that happens through all negotiation. And until you know some of those things, or at least a little bit of those things, I'd like to stay down, that 1,400 to 2,800 piece. After that, do as many as you can fulfill. So you have lead generation, lead capture, and lead fulfillment. Don't over generate leads. Make sure that you can fulfill them all. And you're going to learn your response rate, and you're going to learn your closing rate. The rate that you really want to learn is your resell rate. I mean, how many days does it take? What's the average pieces to a reclose? So it's not just the purchase of a piece of property or contract on a piece of property. It's when you sell that thing. And boy, I've got a couple of pieces of property that just love me to death and don't want to go away. And you start factoring some of those things in, and it just kills your number, but you have to have those numbers. And so those numbers are going to come to you eventually. So start off with 1,400 to 2,800 pieces on a cluster marketing concept, and you should be fine. Question number 5. If I do a seller carryback and a cash buyer isn't going to give me much of a spread, would another owner finance wrap work too? If I do a seller carryback and a cash buyer isn't going to give me much of a spread, would another owner finance wrap work too? Well, a seller carryback doesn't necessarily mean a wrap. So a wrap, for you guys out there, guys and gals, a seller could, if there's an underlying lien or mortgage, wrap that mortgage and put their spread on top of their wrap. So if, say they have a Bank of America loan for $100,000 and they're selling you a piece of property for $150,000 on a seller finance. So they'll wrap their Bank of America with their $50,000 and charge you a single payment interest on $150,000 rather than doing a junior loan where you take the Bank of America Subject 2 with the seller carryback second or junior and make 2 payments. I'd rather always do 2 payments or junior loan to the seller instead of a seller wrap, because I want to be able to get the seller out of the way by paying them off. Where in a seller wrap, I have to pay off the entire 150. In the case of my example, if I did a junior, I'd only have to pay the seller the 50. Now, if you're doing a slim little itty bitty deal to a cash buyer, well, a cash buyer implies that they have cash, so they're going to just wipe out that seller carryback. Now, you can do on your seller carryback, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest it, especially if you don't understand exchangeable collateral. I wouldn't suggest going that route, but you could. So when you do your seller carryback in the beginning, even if it's a junior or a wrap, well, if it's a wrap, you can't. If it's a junior, then you can exchange the collateral. So when you sell, that they're not getting paid off, that you're going to put their loan on another piece of property. And you can go to a straight note, but I wouldn't do that either in the beginning of your career as a real estate investor. Some of these things, although you can do them, you shouldn't, because you may not understand them well enough to work through them. As far as, let's back this situation up and say, okay, if you do, maybe you're doing a sub 2 and a seller carryback, so you're doing a wrap with the seller, and you want to resell it with a seller wrap. I guess you could. I wouldn't. That's not my game. I want to make more money than a little money. And if I was going to do passive income, I would do rentals first, note second, and this way third, although it is kind of a note. So I would want to stay away from that. Some people will teach you to do this. Great. The issue that you have when you do a seller carryback wrap and then you wrap that when you sell it is, for the amount of work that you have as the middle person, you have to collect your payment from your buyer and pay your seller. Well, what happens if your buyer doesn't pay you? Yes, you could not pay your seller and have your seller foreclose against your buyer, but I'd rather not be in that situation. I'd rather not have to deal with the what ifs of real estate. So I'd stay away from the little mini deals. If it's a cash buyer and it's a little mini deal, be happy that you got the $5,000 or the $10,000 or whatever it is that's a mini deal for you, and be done with it. Don't try to stretch out a deal just for the sake of saying I did one. And they have to make business sense for us. And those little mini seller carryback deals, when we're the carryback, to me, they don't make any sense. So great questions today. Really, 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 really great questions today. If you guys have any more, send them our way. If you're interested in the JV program, go up to the site, michaelquarles.com, click on the JV tab. You can read all about it. If you are more interested than just what you read, fill out the form. Someone will contact you and discuss that with you. That program's pretty cool. Then we also have the Gold Coaching Program for those of you that want to learn real estate investing. The Gold Coaching Program will get you into real estate with some knowledge and the equipment that you need to succeed at a really good price point. We're not going to break the bank on that one. And until next time, you guys take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Michael Quarles Real Estate Show. Get more info and stay in touch at michaelquarles.com.